Hello you absolute legends. Doom 2. 30 levels of demon-slaying epicness. Technically, it's a sequel to Doom, one of the greatest and most influential games of all time. But those of us who have played it know that it's essentially the same game, just with new levels, a greater variety of enemies, and of course, twice the amount of shotgun barrels. We all know of Doom's importance when it comes to the evolution of speedrunning, being arguably the most impactful game ever released for the niche. And for my own part, I've taken deep dives into a few of Doom's most iconic records. These have been for individual level speedruns, which I would say is definitely what Doom is most known for. But what about speedruns of the entire game? Did they ever happen? And if so, why aren't they as well known? Interestingly, when it comes to the very first Doom game that was ever released, full game speedruns were never really performed, and the reason for this isn't exactly obvious. The problem is that Doom isn't really a full game per se, but rather a collection of episodes. When you reach the end of an episode, the game doesn't continue on to the next one, everything just stops, and you are brought back to the title screen. Now of course, you can just choose the next episode from here and keep going. But unfortunately, what couldn't keep going is the recording of the demo file. When you reach the end of an episode, the demo just stops, and there is no way to resume it. You could start a new recording, but then you're left with multiple demo files with no way of confirming that they all belong to the same speedrun. Ultimately, this made the category essentially non-existent. Despite this limitation, there have indeed been full game runs, either using a real timer, just like other games, or by using a modified version of the game. These runs, however, are much less popular, and don't have the rich history you'd expect out of such a monumental game. Doom 2, being 30 consecutive levels, is where full game runs could finally thrive. Players could now record a single demo from the very start to the very end of a playthrough. The more conventional structure of Doom 2 is why it has over 25 years of full game speedrunning history, and it's this rich history that we will take a look at today. While various categories exist, the two most popular by far are Ultraviolence Speed and Nightmare Speed. Both of these categories offer some fantastic history, but today we will focus on Ultraviolence Speed. The goal is simply to get to the end of the game as quickly as possible with no restrictions, playing on the ultra-violence difficulty. As is generally the case with full game speedruns, it is the best of the best that stand at the very top, and Doom speedrunning is no exception. So sit back and relax as we explore the world record history of Doom 2. Now before we go on, a shout out to this video's sponsor, NordVPN, and I will quickly show you what I use NordVPN for. So last week was around that time of year where I needed to rewatch my favorite movie of all time, The Shawshank Redemption. But naturally, when I searched for it on Netflix, it wasn't there. Me being an absolute genius though, I knew exactly how to solve this problem. I just did a quick search to see which countries it was available in, changed my location through NordVPN, and voila, there it is in all its glory. For just a few extra dollars a month, I'm getting access to around 4 times the amount of movies and TV shows I could normally watch. That is incredible value, and I end up saving money because I don't need to waste a fortune buying 10 different streaming services. And of course, I still get all of the other features NordVPN is known for, like extra security and privacy. NordVPN even has a money-back guarantee, so if you're not happy for whatever reason, just let them know. Go to nordvpn.com/KarlJobst or click the link in the description to start using NordVPN today. Technically, the oldest record we have of a Doom 2 full game run is a 57-minute and 13-second demo by the player Uwe Gerlich. This dates all the way back to November of 1995. We won't delve too deeply into this particular demo though, and if you check the current archive, you will notice a question mark next to the entry. When expanded, it reads, "Dubious Demo, Player History of Cheating." Uwe and his close friend Stefan Winterfeld are somewhat notoriously known in the Doom community for their abuse of tools like slow motion. Sometimes it's really not possible to definitively show tools were used, but experts seem to agree that this first run likely did use some kind of illegal tool. One thing I will point out though is something in the attached text file. Uwe states, There doesn't exist a Doom honorific title for such a recording, but I think Doom 2 Terminator would suit me fine. Way back in Doom's history in May of 1994, even before people competed in Doom speedrunning, a programmer by the name of Frank Staiano created a website called Doom Honorific Titles. This was a fun, casual way for players to show off their skills by completing certain challenges. They would submit their demo files, which were called exams, and if they were successfully verified, would be awarded a title. A couple of examples were Tyson, which was awarded after completing levels on ultraviolence with 100% kills using only the pistol, fist, or chainsaw. Another title was Pacifist, which was earned after completing levels on ultraviolence without harming monsters. If you already have some knowledge of Doom speedrunning, these titles would sound familiar. They are actually speedrunning categories that were adopted over from Doom honorific titles and are still used today. Now going back to Doom 2 speedruns, the first universally accepted demo comes from the legendary Swedish player, Demon Lord. Demon Lord was one of the most prolific and impactful runners of the 90s, submitting hundreds of demos and cutting swaths of time from existing records. If you've seen my video on The Chasm, this is the very same Demon Lord that learned to love those ledges. On the 19th of November 1995, he submitted a full game run of 1 hour, 10 minutes and 48 seconds. The run was simple, and it's obvious that mere survival through the entire game was the priority, rather than trying to be blisteringly fast. Nowadays, a top player may even consider this to be somewhat of a casual playthrough, but back then, it would have been pretty intense. Over the next year, Demon Lord spearheaded this category, lowering the record multiple times. He eventually landed on a run of 36 minutes and 9 seconds on the 24th of September 1996. It's here that we begin to see glimpses of the type of speedrunning we might see today. On map 20, he begins by immediately jumping into the lava and executing a wall run to quickly reach a teleportal, a technique that is literally used in the current world record. Still, most levels are played in a standard fashion with very little skips or exploits used. Despite many levels being obviously far from optimal, even with these strategies used, Demon Lord felt that he wouldn't be able to go much lower. He concluded his attached notes by saying, "This is probably my last 30 UV recording. I don't think it's possible to push it much more without cheating." This was right around the time Uwe Gerlich and Stefan Winterfeld were being exposed for using slow motion, so the cheating remark is likely a direct reference to that entire situation. In any case, it turns out Demon Lord believed what he said. Despite going on to do some incredible work elsewhere over the next few years, this would be the last submission in this category he would ever complete. Evidently, Demon Lord's run wasn't terrible, as it would take almost 3 years before anyone would touch it. The late 90s saw a slew of incredible gamers see their way into the Doom speedrunning scene. One that was particularly impactful was a Hungarian man by the name of Adam Hedgy. Not only was Adam one of the greatest Doom players of all time, but he also maintained the primary Doom speedrunning demo hosting website Compet-N from 1998 to 2005. The history of Compet-N is actually really interesting, and we are going to delve a bit deeper into that specific topic a bit later in the video. On the 5th of March 1999, Adam Hedgy obliterated Demon Lord's existing record by over 5 minutes, with a run of 30 minutes and 54 seconds. Adam was the first person to really start introducing very precise jumps into the run, a perfect example being map 6, where he was able to successfully perform 2 jumps that shaved off a lot of time. The first was a lift jump to make it to the blue keycard, something that Demon Lord had attempted but failed. And the second was a tight jump to the yellow keycard door leading to the exit, which skips having to activate and wait for a platform to rise. Another amazing player that came into the Doom scene in the late 90s was the Norwegian Henning Skogstø. Henning is most known for his prowess in the Nightmare category, where he was dominant for many years. On the 13th of June 1999, he dethroned Hedgy's run with a time of 29 minutes and 24 seconds. Strategic decisions that were made solely in the interest of survivability are beginning to be discarded. In map 3, where players would previously take a detour to collect the Mega Armor, Invisibility, and the Megasphere, Henning skipped this completely, and even included a jump to the window next to the blue keycard door, skipping the blue keycard as well. more sequence breaks were beginning to be incorporated, like the red bar skip on map 14. Using this one jump alone, Henning was able to gain over 20 seconds on the previous record. The interesting thing about many of these jumps is that they were discovered years earlier, most in 1996. But Doom was still such a brutal game that many of the known exploits were still unused in full game runs in order to preserve consistency. Henning's record would remain unbroken for over 3 years until the American runner Vile destroyed it with a 26-minute and 57-second run on the 6th of December 2002. Like Henning, Vile was also a nightmare specialist. In fact, between the years 1999 and 2015, only 2 players held the full game nightmare speed record: Henning Skogstad and Vile. Joining in the early 2000s, Vile has one of the longest careers in Doom history, and still submits insane demos to this very day. Again, with Vile's new run, more sacrifices were made in regards to safety. Even though Doom 2 consists of 30 main levels, players were still going through levels 31 and 32, the 2 secret Wolfenstein levels. An argument for speed could have been made at the time for going through level 31, as reaching the secret exit on map 15 and then going through map 31 was actually faster than completing map 15 normally. But one such argument could certainly not be made for map 32, as it was definitely quicker to reach the normal exit on map 31 and go back to map 16. In fact, the only reason players were playing map 32 at all was just to stock up on health and armor. Vile chose to skip the health attained on map 32 and instead pick up an invulnerability sphere on the next level. Aside from this, movement was getting much better, and more individual level strategies were being implemented, or at least attempted. Vile's record would remain strong for an entire year, until it was edged out by the Czech runner Radek Peka. On the 28th of December 2003, he would submit a run of 26 minutes and 9 seconds. Radek would be the first person to implement the Archvile trick on map 27. In order to reach the exit portal, you need to attain the red key. In order to reach the red key, you need the blue key. And to get the blue key, you need the yellow key. So ultimately, you need to collect all 3 keys. But you can skip everything if you can manipulate an Archvile into opening the final door. Again, this was another trick that had been discovered at least 7 years prior by the player Laszlo Magori. But as time goes on and speedruns become more optimized, players are left with no choice but to bring in strategies that might not be 100% consistent. Radek's run would last a long time. It would be the longest lasting record in the category's history, standing for 2,534 days, just shy of 7 years. Was this because the run was so impressive that no one else could touch it? Was it really that optimized? Well, not really, and long-lasting records around this time weren't uncommon at all. Quite frankly, Doom speedrunning in general was going through the most inactive period ever, a time that players would refer to as the Dark Age. In order to understand why Doom was going through its most dormant phase, we must understand the context in which Doom speedrunning came into existence. As previously mentioned, the website that maintained all of the speedrunning demos for the original Doom games was Compet.N. It was created in November of 1994 by Simon Widlake. Compet.N was an abbreviation of the word competition, and the community instantly grew in popularity, with many demos being submitted. In 1997, the reins were handed over to Istvan Pataki, who maintained the site until 1998, at which time Adam Hedgie gained control. Something else very important happened in 1998, the release of the operating system Windows 98. This was the final release of Windows that could allow users to boot into MS-DOS mode, which is where many Doom speedrunners launched their game from. Beyond this, when Windows 2000 was released and the operating system switched over to the NT architecture, DOS compatibility was lost entirely. Newer operating systems came with DOS virtual machines and certainly were not able to run Doom well. Players that upgraded to newer systems were essentially screwed, and unless they kept their old computers, they had no way to compete. There were other ways of playing Doom though, and that's one of the reasons that source ports became so widespread. As Doom's source code was released and easily accessible, programmers were able to port the game to any operating system they wished, including the newest iterations of Windows. So source ports were an easy way to solve the problem of playing Doom on modern systems. But there was a problem when it came to Doom speedrunning. The demo website Compet-N didn't allow the use of source ports for competition. Its rules section proudly proclaims, Compet-N is vanilla only, and will stay that way. Vanilla Doom means running Doom straight from the original executable, which requires DOS. Some relief came in 2002 with the creation of DOSBox, a much better emulation of DOS, but it was still just that, an emulation, and not a perfect one. For casual players, the difference was likely too small to notice, but speedrunners definitely noticed some issues like input lag and decreased mouse precision. As the years progressed and fewer people had access to operating systems based on the DOS platform, the amount of runners submitting demos to Compet-N dwindled dramatically. Then in 2005, Adam Hedgie, the man who had been maintaining the official website for the past 7 years, disappeared. Compet-N, one of the most active and influential websites in the early days of speedrunning, all but died, and never fully recovered. A cautionary tale about the trappings of being too rigid with rules and traditions. With more and more people now using source ports, players were growing desperate for a place to submit their new demos. In October of 2000, a Doomworld admin called Opulent created the Doomed Speed Demos archive, inspired by the Quake iteration of the same name. Doomed SDA didn't accept demos for the original Doom games, but rather player-created patches of the game called PWODs. These PWODs are basically fan-created mods of the game with custom levels. Doomed SDA was very important though, because it accepted demos from source ports, and ultimately ended up hosting thousands upon thousands of demos for almost 1,000 separate WODs. The website itself though was very primitive. Not only was it hard to navigate, but updating it was all done manually, and the workload eventually became too much. In 2006, when Opulent expressed the desire to cease his duties in updating the demo archive, the programmer Andy Oliveira took it upon himself to redesign the entire archive from the ground up, introducing a more dynamic, database-generated website. After creating the infrastructure in around 6 months, he then had the task of bringing across all of the existing demos. Due to the sheer number, this was a monstrous task that ended up taking 18 months of effort. Finally, in November of 2008, the new and improved, revived version of Doomed Speed Demos Archive was online. The website's look and feel was vastly improved. It retained the mission of accepting demos recorded using source ports, and best of all, it now accepted and maintained demos for the officially licensed Doom games. With this new central hub for all things Doom speedrunning, its popularity was finally able to grow once again. One of the players that emerged from this new generation was a Finnish gamer who went by the alias Looper. Looper had been sharpening his skills with various challenges over the years, but really exploded onto the Doom speedrunning scene in 2010. On the 5th of December, he would submit a Doom 2 speedrun of 23 minutes and 25 seconds, beating Radek's 7-year record by almost 3 minutes. Looper would implement huge time saves over previous runs, the most notable example being a rocket jump on map 7. The exit switch is located on a platform that is raised and unreachable. This platform only lowers once all of the Mancubi and Arachnotrons have been killed, but with a very precise damage boost, you can jump to the platform, skipping every single enemy. The origin of this particular sequence break stems back to 1997. The two players Thomas Pilger and Patrick von Massau first used the jump in co-op mode. This was done by using the super shotgun to damage boost the second player from a nearby platform to the exit switch. It was theorized that it should be possible to achieve the same effect by rocket boost off of a Mancubus, but the first person to actually do it was Sedlow in 2002, achieving a time of 6 seconds for the level. However, this particular method of abusing the position of a Mancubus is far too unreliable to be incorporated into a full run. In 2005, a new rocket jump was discovered by Vile, with help from another speedrunner, Dashiva. While it was much slower, it was created in the pursuit of completing the level without harming any enemies. In other words, a run for the pacifist category. This was still extremely precise, but at the very least, the position of the wall was always the same, so a reasonable setup could be attained. When Looper used it in his full game run, he saved 40 seconds over the previous record with this one trick alone. On top of rocket jumps, squeeze glides were being introduced as well. Squeeze glides are movement through gaps that are the exact same width as the player, which technically shouldn't be possible, but in practice it can be done. Like many other tricks, these had been known for years as well, but consistent setups were still lagging behind. These glides allow players to skip keys or large sections of level. With the addition of so many modern strategies, Looper's run was a huge leap from previous demos, and it would remain the record for almost 4 years. But in 2014, a behemoth began to stir. Doom players across the globe felt a great disturbance in the force. The Norwegian gamer Zeromaster was entering the scene, and on the 16th of November 2014 would beat Looper's record with a time of 23 minutes and 3 seconds. At this early stage of his career, Zeromaster's movement wasn't anywhere near as mechanical as Looper's, but what he excelled at was finding consistent ways to execute strategies that were previously too unreliable to even consider, especially when it came to squeeze glides. Zeromaster developed much more reliable setups to perform glides, and he was able to then use them in full game runs. Performing glides quickly is imperative because you are often in danger of getting mauled by demons when trying to do them, and if you simply clear out enemies beforehand, you're basically losing most of the time gained, along with ammo. With his superior movement ability, Looper was able to take Zeromaster's innovations and immediately strike back with a run of 21 minutes and 55 seconds on the 14th of December 2014. Over the next several months, Zeromaster would continue to optimize strategies. Along with creating many of his own, he would begin to scrape the bottom of the barrel of ancient knowledge. On the 13th of March 2015, he would achieve a time of 20:32. On map 29, he implemented a precise rocket jump that was discovered 15 years earlier, and on the chasm, he used the extremely precise wall run to cross the toxic pool before the end, therefore skipping over the complex ledge section. Though it has to be said, despite incorporating this trick, he still wasn't able to match Looper's time for that stage. Looper had spent far too many years grinding the ledges, and even in full game runs was able to traverse them effortlessly. After 5 more months of practice, Zeromaster would submit the first run to go below 20 minutes, with a run of 19:59. This essentially used the same strategies as his previous submission, but his overall technique had been steadily improving. 2016 saw the entry of the Australian runner Elim with a time of 19:51. Like Zeromaster, Elim began Doom speedrunning in 2014 after witnessing Dime's run of Plutonia at Awesome Games Done Quick. Elim had spent a lot of time grinding Doom 2, but wasn't quite able to push through to the top spot until this point. Elim wasn't known for revolutionizing the way the game is played, but his hard work ethic allowed him to cultivate his skill enough to challenge even the best players. Being stripped of his record, Zeromaster came back strong, achieving a 19:36 in December of 2016, and a 19:28 on the 9th of March 2017. By this point, the amount of time that could be saved by introducing existing strategies was dwindling dramatically. Optimizations would save a few seconds here or there, though nothing close to what had been seen in years prior. But surprisingly, even 20 years after the game was released, game-changing mechanics were still lying in wait to be discovered. In July of 2017, Zeromaster finds a brand new exploit, which would become known as the Zero Press. This new technique allows players to press switches from further away than should be possible, and it even works through walls. This causes a drastic shift in the routing of a couple of levels. On map 15, a Zero Press can be used to quickly activate the door leading to the blue keycard. Previously, players would have to navigate multiple obstacles to the very top of a building in order to reach that same switch, which can now be hit from outside. Because Doom isn't technically 3D, you can hit the switch from far below on the ground level. The fact that the blue keycard took so long to collect is why before this technique was found, speedrunners would use the secret exit and go through map 31, the secret level. This ended up being faster, even with the extra map. Now, players could reach the normal exit much quicker, and therefore skip map 31 entirely. On map 17, you could hit the switch behind the yellow keycard door from the outside, through the wall. This meant that you could skip the yellow key, saving at least 30 seconds. Using this new Zero Press, Zeromaster took the record below 19 minutes with an 18:48. From here, most known strategies were already being implemented. Slight variations saving at most a few seconds were constructed here and there, but players knew the main way this record was going to go lower was by refining the existing techniques and making sure their mechanics were rock solid. Over the next few years, a three-way battle ensued between Looper, Zeromaster, and Elim, with each player exchanging blows. By February of 2020, it was Elim on top with an 18-17. With the 18-minute barrier looming ahead, the question was who would be the one to destroy it. In May of 2020, it was Looper who eventually decided to take the initiative to grind for the first 17-minute run. And best of all, he would stream his attempts on Twitch, which I have to say is relatively rare for Doom speedrunning. In June, several weeks into attempts, he would take back the record with an 18-12. In July, he would cut it down again to 18:06. August would see another 2 seconds shaved off. On September 10th, coming into the second to last map, he was 8 seconds ahead of his 18:04. But some unlucky pathing with a Cacodemon cost him barely enough time to put the milestone in doubt. After 4 entire months of grinding, with a personal best of 18 flat, the task seemed to take much longer than anticipated. But finally, on the 26th of September 2020, Looper would achieve this run.
This map can still fail. I fucking did it. Oh. I'm actually quite happy it's not 1759. That took some time to get the sub 18.
From its humble beginnings as a test of survival, the Doom 2 full game speedrun had certainly evolved over the years into a true test of speed. In the modern age of Doom speedrunning, movement and precision are now king. Pixel-perfect jumps, glides, and presses now litter the landscape. Looper's 1755 was the pinnacle and culmination of 25 years of progression. And then, in December, Zeromaster casually drops a 1754 out of nowhere. Spurred on once again by the competition, Looper began streaming again in January to fight back. After tinkering with his control settings and upgrading his computer and monitor, Looper felt better than ever. No longer restrained by the looming possibility of breaking a new barrier, he went on a tear. Over a 3-week period, he lowered the record a total of 4 times, landing on a 17:29 on the 11th of February 2021. And this is where the record stands today. The Doom 2 full game speedrun had gone from a time of 1 hour and 10 minutes in 1995 to just under 17.5 minutes over a span of 25 years. I must say, I had an absolute blast going back in time once again to learn more about the history of Doom speedrunning. Of course, there are still many more stories to be told, and I hope you can join me when we make this trip down memory lane again in the future. Now, a huge shout out to the Doom speedrunners who are always happy to answer my questions. If you are thinking about speedrunning Doom, I will put a link to the Doom speedrunning Discord in the description, and I really recommend you join. As always, thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.